Hey, everybody. Good evening. Happy Sunday night, March 22nd. Hope you all are doing well. And we'll just give everybody a little bit of time to jump in here, and then we'll get started. But thanks for anybody that joined right at the beginning. And I'll just give it another 30 seconds here, and we'll jump right in. Granzino is first. Thank you so much for being here. And for anyone that's just joining us, I just want to mention that we're doing a bunch of live streams. I'm going to be doing a lot. I'm ramping up. I'm aiming for quite a few. I'm aiming to get to a point where I'm doing, hopefully, eventually, on some weeks, 3, 4, even 5 per day. That may not include open mics for all of them, of course, but for a lot of them, it's going to be open mics and a lot of interviews, live interviews, and some monologues, of course, and occasionally some poetry, all the above. But I'm trying to get just ramp this up, do my best, and also to be a part of the community and to just be just really involved, really giving people a platform to speak. I obviously have a lot of things I have on my heart to share, but I do want to be also a platform for everyone else to share. So on that note, I've been absolutely barraged with people interested in interviews. Thank you so much. And if you haven't reached out yet, please do. If you have, please just bear with me as I respond to everybody. I've got a lot of people reaching out. It was overwhelming, honestly, the response to my request the other day for people to jump in and let me know if they're ready to do an interview. I'm going to be doing probably a live stream at some point in the next week where I just talk about how to prepare. So if you're on the fence and you're like, I'm not sure if I want to do it or not, look out for a live stream soon where I just kind of chat. It's going to be, in that sense, boring if you're already quite ready and quite prepared to do an interview. Probably one you could skip unless you just want to hang out. But for anyone that is thinking about doing an interview and is just not sure where to start, I'm going to talk for an hour about some main points, about things to think through. For anyone that hasn't done an interview like that before, you might be surprised at how much I have to say. You might be like, there's not that much. Just connect your video, connect your audio, connect your headphones, and what else do you need? You're good to go to start talking. There's a lot more to it than that, and I'm going to share some of those things, and I hope it's an encouragement and help to you. But having said all that, anyone that has not yet reached out to me that was thinking about it, reach out to me on Facebook. I'm going to put my Facebook handle here. It's called Harmonic Tim. I know there is a Harmonic Atheist business page, so to speak, of Facebook. The messenger doesn't work the same way, and I can't see you the same way. If you add me as a friend, I can see you. I like to check people out, make sure I know who I'm getting into with the interview. So please add me as a friend, and if you've got pictures up of yourself, obviously, and then we can jump in and get a date set and get you ready. So live streams are a little bit of a different animal when you're doing an interview. You have to watch what you say, mind your P's and Q's, because it's out there. We can't edit it and say, well, scratch, I didn't mean to say that, let's start over. It's out there. So you do have to think about it a little differently, but at the same time, it's also really nice because once you do it, it's done. You're not waiting on me to edit it. And also you can, of course, get some comments from the people, people applauding you, people asking you questions, and maybe better questions that I've come up with. And that's really good. I like to have the community interacting with people more than I've been able to do so far with the pre-recorded interviews. So Granzino again first. Thank you so much for being here. Yep. And see here, Steady Eddie, like that. Blessed be everyone who has released themselves from the shackles of religion. Absolutely. Yep. Accidentally agnostic in the building. Thank you so much. You got this. Keep them coming. Thank you so very much. I really appreciate it. And again, this is my handle on Facebook, Harmonic Tim. Again, there is a Harmonic Atheist page. That's my business page. Don't you can't add me as a friend there. You can follow it, but anyway, in terms of tonight, what I thought we would do is jump into a little bit of a different topic than I've covered with you all recently, but I think it's a good one, and it's worthwhile to focus on for a bit and look at. It's the question of apocalypticism, and I think a lot of you would be able to say, I definitely struggled with some of the ways that impacted me. And so I just want to say, as I get started here, and I'm going to put in the link here. Let me do that right now. StreamYard link. So I invite you all to jump in with me. You can do audio only. You can do video. You can do both. You can also stay out of all that and just do comments, and I'll read them, whatever's most comfortable for you. But I think just to kick us off, I think a lot of us grew up with this sort of low-level sense that disaster was always circling. It was always coming in a prophetic sense. It just, I mean, sometimes it was a low-grade thing. Sometimes it was like a freight train. But, you'd hear about wars and rumors of wars and earthquakes and some new political crisis, some new technology, perhaps, that sounded like the mark of the beast. And suddenly you'd get kind of like worried a little bit because your mind already knows where to take this stuff. Revelation, Ezekiel, Isaiah, all this, the prophetic books, the end times, the signs of the times, and this whole emotional machinery about the apocalypse and Armageddon starts to sort of grind on your mind a lot. And for a lot of us, this mentality that we call apocalypticism, it really got inside of us, in our worldview, in our bodies almost. And I think that's one of the hardest parts that you would have to explain to someone that did not grow up in it, that this, again, wasn't just theology. This was like you really believed it. And of course, we would say that first and foremost about our relationship with Christ. I really believed I was in a personal relationship with God through his son. But also, like, this was really personal. This was not just theology. This wasn't just a belief about the future someday, sometime, who knows what. This is stuff that shaped the texture of your everyday life. And it kind of made the world feel eerie and scary, certainly unsafe on some levels. And for some people, it made you feel guilty, perhaps, for relaxing too much because there's so much at stake and so much to worry about. Perhaps even guilty for dreaming too far ahead, knowing that you don't have that too far ahead. Christ is going to come back any minute now. And I know Jehovah's Witnesses talk about that all the time, that they were told to not really don't plan to go to college because you won't be here. Christ is coming back way before you'll get done college. Don't go that far. It's just, you're going to waste your time. And I think a lot of this stuff really wired us for fear. It really did. And somewhere in the background of our minds, there's always this message that everybody here is about to go through a huge trial, a huge tribulation, and then it's going to burn. And you better be ready. In the words of the song, I wish we'd all been ready. And that does a lot of damage if you're doing that long term, especially from the earliest days. And so tonight, I just want to make some space for people to talk about it, if you'd like to. Talk honestly about what this did to you, to your mental health, to your sleep, to your nervous system, to your sense of safety, to your ability to enjoy life, to plan ahead or not plan ahead, to trust your own thoughts, maybe just to exist in the present without sort of scanning the horizon all the time with, wonder what's next for the prophetic events. I know my dad, he would watch the news a lot, and I'd ask him, like, why, the news, a lot of the times the news is like repetitive. You'd watch it at 4 o'clock and then you watch it again at 6 o'clock. And I'd say, isn't it kind of a recap of the same thing you just watched at 4 o'clock? And he would literally talk about how it was important to connect the dots prophetically. So it was important for men of God to be involved in watching the news. That was his justification. A lot of us are untangling some of the weird things that went on, and we're realizing that there was a lot of people doing discernment. Like if you can discern the signs of the times, you were kind of more spiritually mature. You were supposed to be watchful, sort of hypervigilant in that sense. And we had all this faith that there was coming this huge cosmic collapse. And it was going to be real. It was going to be intense. It was going to be overwhelming. It's going to turn the whole world upside down. And as long as you're on the right side of it, you'll ultimately be okay. But it was still pretty scary. And we're going to drag it all into the light if we can. Not just in this session, but over time. Drag it into the light. Talk about how heavy it was to think this could be the day. And when you're taught all the time, expect at any point the end is coming. Remember the pictures of those guys who would literally walk around Times Square with the big sign, the end is near, or the end is here. You see it sometimes in the movies. But when you have it in your mind that you need to expect the end to come really soon, it can be strangely difficult to live your life. Hard to just really settle down and to believe in tomorrow, and to believe in steadiness, to believe that what you do tomorrow what you do today counts for tomorrow, because tomorrow may not come. I love that quote in Groundhog's Day where he says, "What if tomorrow never comes? It didn't come today." But it's hard to let your body sort of unclench from all that, isn't it? And these are the kinds of things that we do with our work, our worldview work, and our emotional psychology work. We're sort of learning to come back down to earth. We're sort of learning to feel the present right here, right now, to be okay with our lives. And you don't kind of have to live with your life like one eye is on today, one eye is on my school, my work, and my, all the things I have to do today, but one eye is really on the sky. I'm looking at the sky, waiting for the hard that's about to happen. So my question for you is, again, through comments or through jumping into the live stream. And it's basically just to say, how did this affect your mental health as a Christian? And if it does still affect your mental health, please let me know that as well. I'm going to read some comments here as we kick it off. Amy Collins, thank you so much for joining us tonight. A Protestant family friend scared me pretty good with her interpretation of Revelation. Fortunately, the Catholic majority of the family calmed me down. That's really good. Yeah, the Protestants are so good at using Revelation and the other prophetic books and passages to really they paint a whole big picture. First Thessalonians, the trumpet of the Lord will sound, the dead in Christ will rise first, and the rest of us will be joining the Lord together. And just all these stories, all these pictures, and a lot of it can be really preached hard. They can preach it hard, especially when you get into Armageddon and all these wars. I remember some preachers, they were so intent on saying, when it says locusts, what it really means is B-2 stealth bombers. And, they would be like, they'd figured it out. To them, they were discerning, and they'd figured out what all the stuff meant. It meant specific weaponry and machinery that we had, that, no one would have known what it was until today. And they got real scary with it all. Olive Owl, great to see you. My grandfather was big on Bible prophecy and would lead seminars for years. I also got super into it myself. Yeah, I would say as well. I always felt a bit overwhelmed and intimidated by it, because I felt like everyone else was like making these conclusions that I couldn't quite make. But I thought it was fascinating. I also felt like if you could really figure it out, that there was something special there. Revelation talks about those who read this book, there's a blessing. And I really wanted to get that, understand it. Maybe she gave the right interpretation, yeah. In the Catholic Church, in the Catholic teachings, they speak of a crisis in the church and other vague ideas. Yeah. Yeah, it seems like the Catholic Church does a slightly better job of not scaring everybody to quite the same degree, although I would argue that the intense statues are probably a little bit harder for some kids to swallow, and also, of course, purgatory. But I guess purgatory is arguably better than just straight to hell. It's better to say, no, you're a child of God still. You'll get there. Just you're gonna have to get a little bit of the bad stuff out, but you'll be in heaven someday, as opposed to just turn or burn. Keith does Kung Fu. Yeah, I was obsessed with it for a while, and it was very fear-inducing for sure. After I became convinced of pre-trib rapture, I was able to put it in the back of my mind and not worry as much. Yeah. But it was still in the back of my mind. I used to try to visualize Jesus coming through the clouds when I was on a walk or in the car. Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes you almost felt like you'd see the pictures in the sky with the clouds you'd make up, and you'd think, I almost think something split in the sky right now. Yeah, and you better be ready. You better be ready. Amy Collins, that was 44 years ago, and she hasn't been right about anything yet. Yeah, the prophecies, they keep on failing. I used to visualize Jesus a lot in my preteen years. Yeah. Or at least the worst has not yet come true. It's so easy to do, and true, it's just wishful fantasies. Yeah, it really is. Again, I'm going to just go through. I'm going to talk tonight about some things that came up in my reflection on this. But again, anyone that wants to join, either through the comments that we've had so far, or through joining in the live stream, or through the audio live stream, you're welcome to do so. I think one of the things that I think relates to mental health a lot is just the chronic hypervigilance. When you're constantly scanning, you're scanning the news, like I talked about with my dad. You're scanning political events. You're scanning for the signs of the times. You're scanning for even other preachers that are interpreting things better than you. Like, I wonder who's got a better feel for this. All these, again, prophetic clues, the world events that might sort of signal that the end is near. You do end up with this chronic hypervigilance, and that's packaged inside of an existing hypervigilance about your need to fight sin, to be honoring to God, to not get caught, as as they say in some of the parables, like the virgins waiting for their bridegroom. Don't get caught, out there, looking for oil. You need to be prepared, be ready when the bridegroom comes. You must be ready to go. And there was almost a sense, I think some people got. I didn't quite get this far, but I think some people got a sense that if you were sort of neck deep in sin at the time that Christ came back, that even if you were a Christian, just the fact that you were really entrenched in sin at that moment, like there was something special about that moment. The moment you see his face, the moment the angels and Jesus return and basically, start the whole end times events. If you got caught in a sin at that moment, or with unconfessed sin that you should have resolved, that's just sitting there on the table for a long, long time, that you really are, you might make it to heaven, but you're kind of going to enter heaven with your head held low, your tail tucked between your legs, just ashamed of yourself. Like, God, I was waiting for you like this. My whole life was waiting for this moment. It's kind of like, if you were to be engaged to be married and your wedding day finally comes and you come in with your clothes all torn up and your face is all dirty, and it's nothing like you got in a car accident. You just were really dirty and decided, I'm not really going to clean up. I'm just going to kind of show up filthy. Like, you should be ashamed to go to your own wedding day like that on purpose when you had a chance to clean up. And that was definitely in the back of my mind a lot. I think there was a lot of pressure, intense pressure on people, myself included, to get the interpretation right. And that if you didn't get it right, that you were, number one, you were leaving behind an incredible blessing. God wanted to bless you by revealing things that he wasn't going to reveal to the unbelievers, but just the anxiety to get it right, to partake in these important discussions that God had gone out of his way to sort of explain, but in a stealthy way. He's going to reveal it to the spiritual people, but blind those who are worldly. And you just had this sense that you really needed to get it right. And there were preachers that would preach. And again, I grew up in a home where the Christian radio was on all the time, but you would get this sense that there were some preachers that would come on with confidence that they should not have had, not just in Christianity as a whole, but in their specific interpretation of Bible passages. And the flavor of the month that I was really in for most of my life, because of my dad, was the pre-trib, rapture stuff, and basically premillennialism, the whole Ryrie study Bible kind of stuff. And there were just people that would pound the pulpit, so to speak, through the radio about how that's the only interpretation. And of course, they don't tell you that a lot of that interpretation hadn't even been around for like 1700 years. And they didn't tell you that there was a lot of other good Christians, good in quotes, of course, now, but good Christians who had completely different perspectives. I think one of the best things I heard as a kid that helped me to calm down a little bit, there was this great teacher. I didn't personally have him, but I knew it was a teacher at the school where my dad taught. It's called the Christian Academy. And Mr. Horn, I believe it was. Mr. Horn was talking about it, and he said, I've heard people say pre-mill, post-mill, pre-trib, post-trib, and he says, I am pan-mill and pan-trib. And we're like, what does pan-mill and pan-trib mean? And he says, I believe it'll all pan out in the end. And it was like, okay, so you don't really have you're not going to die on any hills, but you're a good man. You're a spiritual man. You're a Christian man. You love the Lord, you love the Bible, and you don't really know what the answer is. And he's like, yeah, I read one book, and that seems like it makes so much sense how the end will work out. And then I read another one that's the opposite, and that makes a lot of sense too. It's like, I don't know. I do not know. It'll pan out in the end. But that stuff like that helped me to calm down a little bit about it. Like, yeah, there's good people that just don't know, and maybe I can be a good person that just doesn't know. But there were still so many people in my sphere of influences that kind of said, no, you kind of need to find a hill to die on about how you interpret the end times. And little did I know, I'll go back to the comments here in a minute, but little did I know that there was a whole group of people, the post-millennialists, who really believed that you were supposed to do your best, not just to watch for Jesus coming back, but to work for it, aggressively work for it, because when you work for it And eventually, when the knowledge of the Lord fills the earth, that's what ushers in the kingdom. And it shook me to my core to think there's some people who literally think Jesus is waiting for me. He's waiting for me to do something, that we as a church take all these steps to bring about the kingdom. And that's when he returns. So he's not coming back any minute now. He's waiting on us to get this done. So it's fascinating how it all works. I'm going to read a few comments and I'll either keep going or see if anyone joins. Noelle is in the house. Thank you so much, Noelle, for being here. It's like being so desperate to escape a fire that you'll trust a mass murderer just because they say they know the way out. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a good picture. I like that. Thank you so much for being here, Noelle. Grand Zeno, there's this passage in the Bible where God mentions that everyone, including believers, are to face the same fate as beasts upon death. So either way, it's pointless to try and get to heaven. I forget the verse's name and exact wording. Feel free to, once you find that, feel free to bring it up. I'd like to look at that. I don't think I've remember exactly what that is, but no worries. Yeah, it really is. Mark Richter, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us today. I don't think we've connected yet, but please do reach out to me on Facebook. And if you've done so already, please just, make a quick note to bring it to the top of my inbox. I definitely want to make sure we get a chance to get you on the channel. But thank you so much, Mark, for being here. Really appreciate your support and kindness to me in the channel. So again, the link for the StreamYard, if anyone cares to join, no pressure, no need to. Don't feel like you have to. It's just out there as an option. But if you do want to join, feel free. We're going to do it, 5 minutes max, say 7 minutes max. It's not an interview, but just if you want to share your thoughts on this. Otherwise, comments are fine too. I think a lot of us would argue that we were facing anxiety of some sort from the end times concepts, but that anxiety was really a sense of spirituality, like of discernment. And it paralleled for me a lot the idea of there's angels and demons all around us. So the Frank Peretti, this piercing the dark, this present darkness, piercing the darkness, that kind of stuff. There was this sense that even though that's kind of scary and there's anxiety, that if you're in tune with the end times and you're in tune with the signs of the times and you're in tune with the angels and demons and spiritual warfare, yes, it's anxiety producing, but that's part of spirituality. That's part of discernment, watchfulness, spiritual seriousness. And that made you really a better Christian. You weren't going to get taken by surprise by any of this stuff. Definitely a sense of trying to grow in that and all these little aspects of what it means to be a good, godly Christian. I think that a lot of it too, again, I'm just going to talk through some things that came to my mind. A lot of it gave us the sense that there was no real safety. The world was so unstable. It was so cursed, of course, from the fall, but cursed really in ways that were going to crescendo up into something major, the tsunami of the end times events. We were always on the edge of a catastrophe, and anything, even, I'm sure I don't really listen to Christians now, as you would guess, but I'm sure that the stuff going on with Iran, there are people saying these are the signs of the times. This is it, and they're going to bring out, there's somebody's got a red heifer somewhere. It's always that fucking red heifer. Someone's got a red heifer somewhere. They're ready to slaughter, and they're ready to, take out the Temple Mount, the Muslim place, and they're ready to just reinstitute the whole Jewish temple and the sacrifices, and it just goes on and on and on. But you're one step away from all that starting, and you just never know. You never know. You're going to wake up one day, and all of a sudden, that's it. The mark of the beast. I knew it was coming. And there we are. There it is. It's a red MAGA hat. The mark of the beast right on your forehead. Make America great again. Whatever. But it's going to come someday. We're going to have a barcode on our hands or our forehead, or they're going to inject it under your skin. And you just thought, every time you read about technology or politics, the world, you couldn't ever just relax. And I'm not saying you should relax in this world. This is a very dangerous world, but you can relax that the things that are coming that are going to be negative and awful have nothing to do with a God or with angels and demons or Jesus' return or some angelic fight. There's going to be unsafe things just because we as humans are very good at destroying ourselves, unfortunately. But anyway, I'm going to come back to that in a minute. I'm going to read a couple comments, and then I've got Keith here in the background, and we'll bring him on for a minute, and then we'll see if anyone else also wants to join. See here. Keith does Kung Fu, so we're going to be speaking with Keith in a minute. It's funny because the very beginning of Jesus's ministry, he was preaching that the end was nigh. Yeah, I think as well as John the Baptist. Very much so. Tim, have you heard the theory that the rapture plus millennium has already happened and we're living in the period of time where Satan is deceiving the nations? It messed me up while I was still a Christian. Yeah, I think a lot of that stuff, and there's a lot of Christians that I've come across in the last year or two who they were deconverted now, but a lot of them came through that path, like Derek Lambert talks about, where you really did think that the Christ return was part of 70 AD and the fall, the destruction of the Second Temple, and all that. And there are people that kind of make this whole weird timeline, like Jesus' return was spiritual. It wasn't physical; it was spiritual. I mean, the bullshit just never ends, But it definitely could. I didn't get into it like you're referring to, but I could see it messing people up. Absolutely, it's very crazy. Noel says it taught me to be led by terror and desperation rather than to slow down and critically think it through. Yeah, well said. Amy says every day is the end to 160,000 people. There are many apocalypses every day. Yeah, and thousands of them are kids. It's awful. Ecclesiastes 3:19-21. Okay, yep. Thank you for that, Granzino. I'll look that up later. Yeah, that's a little bit different than the passages that refer specifically to, you die and then you face the judgment seat of Christ. Ecclesiastes in the wisdom literature is a little bit different, but I hear your point. Humans and animals share the same fate. Both die, all come from dust and return to dust. Yeah, I don't think most Christians would interpret that to say that means that we don't go somewhere when we die, but simply that our bodies go to dust, our spirits go to the judgment seat and go to ultimately heaven or hell. Keith, I'll be with you in 1 second. Noel says, my mental health was impacted in that I didn't know how to make good decisions for myself. I relied on faith, aka knee-jerk reactions. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of us did that, and a lot of our good decisions would be based on, the general interpretations we heard from our pastors and teachers. Ecclesiastes 3:21, it questions who knows whether the human spirit goes upward and the animal spirit goes downward. Yeah. Again, the wisdom literature is a little bit different. At least when I was a Christian, I would have said it, the interpretation is a little bit different. But at the end of the day, we know there's a lot of passages that say, it's appointed unto man once to die, and after that, the judgment. We know that most people would say that they believe that when they die, Christians would say when they die, they will go to heaven or hell, with the first step as being you face God and you face a judgment. Tavo says, as a believer myself, I have to recognize it's really difficult to live in constant fear of our shortcomings. Okay. I'm guessing you mean as a believer, a Christian believer, potentially. Yeah, living in constant fear of our shortcomings is definitely a big concern. Fiery unbeliever, sorry about that. I can relate to the faith thing negatively affecting my mental health too. Yeah. So we're going to take a break from the comments, and from my comments, we're going to bring Keith on the stage here, and we'll get back to everything in a minute. But Keith, here we go. Hey, Keith, how are you doing tonight?
Great.
Great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. And remind us again where you're coming from, and then feel free to answer the question about how apocalypticism affected your mental health.
I'm coming from Kansas, middle of Kansas, smack dab in the middle of the U.S. So, I mean, for me, I think that it's just like everybody's kind of been commenting already. And I am Keith does Kung Fu, by the way. So that is me. Same person.
Is your Kung Fu strong?
Yeah. I don't know, not so much anymore. Well, it probably it's in there somewhere. But I was gonna say that, I'd echo a lot of what everyone else was saying as far as just the anxiety-inducing, fear-inducing, constantly hyper-vigilant, like you were saying, with all the verses about like make sure you're ready, and the bridegroom, and the stuff you had kind of mentioned already as well. So I mean, I guess I don't have a whole lot to add as far as like, it was kind of the same deal where I was just researching, and wait, is it this? Is it that? And all the different scriptures and how they fit together and what's the most likely. And, it seems like there was never like with most things in scripture, because it's not perfect, there's a lot of different conclusions you can come to, especially dealing with stuff like such a ephemeral concept. I think it's kind of like there's just this idea that God is going to make everything right and punish the wicked and reward the just. And as I'm sure you're probably way more educated than I am, but like what's helped me kind of like understand that has been learning about how Jesus, they think, and especially Paul, were part of these like apocalyptic Judaism sects, where that was like the main sort of driving focus of their whole ministry. And it comes through in the writings, but like I think a lot of people don't realize just how serious they were, that they thought the end was coming and y'all better, like, even in the way that Paul talks to some of the churches is very much in like okay, yeah, you just guys need to get your stuff together for long enough for, Jesus to come back and set everything straight, right? I mean, am I right in that? That's kind of like,
and that was really, you could see that as well in the Essene community. I mean, there were Essenes that were more peaceful, but a lot of the Essenes were doing that too. And it's crazy when you look at the Essene writings and some of the Qumran writings. The children of light against the children of darkness, and you're like, and then you read the scriptures, the New Testament scriptures, and you're like, holy smokes! Like you guys were not necessarily Essenes, but you were heavily influenced by this kind of thinking. It is crazy.
Yeah, and like the mysticism that Paul was influenced by or a part of, where this is where we get the idea of like the resurrected body being like, you're going to be like some kind of, I don't know, Superman or something, where the flesh will be like raised to a more perfect level somehow.
Yeah.
I always kind of imagine, have you ever seen City of Angels?
I don't think
so. So the angel, it's who is it? Nicolas Cage. He falls in love with a human and he makes himself visible. So it's Meg Ryan. So, anyways, it's this pretty good movie. But like there's a scene where she finds out that he's not a real person. And she's like, he's cutting like carrots or something on a cutting board, and he cuts through his thumb and it just goes straight through his thumb, almost like he's a ghost or something. Like, so I don't know. I always pictured like the resurrected body being something like that, where it's like you don't even have like internal organs or something. Like you're just this blob of, I don't know. Like, it's just crazy when you think about like all the different ways you can imagine, like, how is this body, because it's supposed to be physical and it's going to last for eternity. So, is it going to be blood and guts like it is now? Or are we going to need to eat in order to, all these questions about like how all that's going to come about. But it is kind of a mind fuck, really, like with how, like you were saying, you're constantly on the lookout and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, absolutely. And while you're on with me, I was going to say, I'm just going to read something real quick, and then you can feel free to comment on these. But just two songs that came to mind. Of course, Larry, I think we all probably heard some version of Larry Norman's song, "I Wish We'd All Been Ready." I'm just going to read the lyrics here. Life was filled with guns and war, and everyone got trampled on the floor. I wish we'd all been ready. Children died, the days grew cold. A piece of bread could buy a bag of gold. I wish we'd all been ready. There's no time to change your mind. The sun has come and you've been left behind. A man and wife asleep in bed. She hears a noise and turns her head. He's gone. I wish we'd all been ready. Two men walking up a hill. One disappears and one's left standing still. I wish we'd all been ready. There's no time to change your mind. The sun has come and you've been left behind. Life was filled with guns and war, and everyone got trampled on the floor. I wish we'd all been ready. Children died. The days grew cold. A piece of bread could buy a bag of gold. I wish we'd all been ready. There's no time to change your mind. How could you have been so blind? The Father spoke. The demons dined. The sun has come and you've been left behind. You've been left behind, etc. And then Keith Green, Until That Final Day. My flesh is tired of seeking God, but on my knees I'll stay. I want to be a pleasing child until that final day. My mind is full of many thoughts that clutter and confuse, but standing firm I will prevail in faith that I'll be used. Amen. I'll be asking once again. I'm asking once again, will you help me, my friend, Lord Jesus? Holy Lord Spirit, set us free from chains we cannot see. Come release us. I wrestle not with flesh and blood. My fight is with the one who lost the keys of hell and death to God's most precious Son. One sleepless night of anguished prayer, I triumphed over sin. One battle in the holy war, God's promised me to win. Amen. I'm asking once again, won't you help my friend, Lord Jesus? Holy Lord Spirit, set us free from chains we cannot see. Come release us. My flesh is tired of seeking God, but on my knees I'll stay. I want to be a pleasing child until that final day. And I think there's those kinds of messages of like, there is a final day coming.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish we'd all been ready. And there's probably another dozen songs, people can think of off the top of their heads, but and many more woven into hymns and so forth. And you just get this strong sense that this is a big part of our worldview, is not just that we believe, but
Yeah.
we believe that God is about to do something major, and it's going to be catastrophic for pretty much everybody. I mean, we know those verses about where remember the verse where Jesus says, the way to life is narrow and most people don't find it. The way to life is wide and most people go there. And you just get the sense that, I'm sorry, but you all are pretty much up a creek without a paddle, and it's going to be really bad.
That verse, it struck such fear into my heart, because like, am I on the narrow path? It's always that like again, coming back to the hypervigilance and self-checking, and even when you're doing good, I was thinking about this, like we tend to emphasize like the sin and the struggle and all that kind of stuff, but even when I was doing well, I would always be that nagging kind of like, that's why I kind of tried to gravitate towards grace and forgiveness and peace and the nice things. But yeah, back to those lyrics are crazy. Like just the depth of and it really plays with the imagination too. I think like, just the ability for us to picture these things, like commenting earlier, as far as like just imagining Jesus parting the clouds and coming through and like bursting with the light and everything. And like just having that kind of always, like you're saying, in the back of your mind. It is like, whether you know it or not, I guess it is kind of like, I guess you would say trauma inducing, or just like kind of a low grade sort of, unless, I would argue maybe some Christians would push back and say like, well, no, I saw it as like a joyful thing. Like, if the rapture is going to come, well, praise Jesus, he's here. And they're waiting they wanted it to come. But then like, it's a positive emotional experience that you're having, but I think to your point earlier, it is a negative overall, because like you said, you're not planning, like the 10-year plan doesn't matter, so to speak, because if he's coming any day, then who cares? And that's why, like, I'm not like a super environmentalist, but I've always been like, we shouldn't be like littering and stuff, and that's always kind of bugged me, and like poisoning the rivers and everything like that, and the ocean. And so like I have come across Christians that were a little callous about that, as far as like, where it's not a big deal because God's just going to come wipe it away, like wipe the slate clean, like the flood, but with fire this time, and
yeah, make a new heaven and new earth.
Yeah, and those visualizations of like the blood reaching the horse's bridle, and all of the like destruction and death and everything that's happening in Revelation is just so, that imagery is so like potent, and it's so ripe for like people to make any kind of interpretation, and then put it in whatever like age you want, and that's why there is so many different, when's this stuff going to happen? Did it already happen? Is it I don't know about, maybe you can comment on this, the already not yet. Did you get into that? The already not yet kingdom?
A little bit. I don't think I was probably not in it enough to articulate it very well, but I think I'm pretty sure I've heard about it a few times. But
yeah,
I know a little bit about it.
it's the idea that like when Jesus came, he already brought the kingdom, and we are the kingdom on earth, so to speak. So it's already, the kingdom is here, but it's not yet, because it's not yet. And so it was like this whole like way to conceptualize the end times as far as that goes.
Yeah, yeah. I had it often pictured to me too with a little different, but they would picture the way you would interpret certain passages as if you were looking at mountains that were increasingly higher. And so like they would say when God would prophesy something in the Old Testament, it had something to do with the nation of Israel right then and there when it was prophesied, and it was relevant in that day, but it actually had to do with something yet to come, perhaps when Jesus was here, but it actually fulfills finally when the end time comes, and you see this line of sight to all these higher mountains, and if it affects all of them, it's relevant to all of them, and that's how they justify it all. But if I could just add too, I think you said something that made me think about this, that a lot of it too, I think, really gets us normalized even more against violence, or the violence is okay, because when you think, even if you were to question the violence of the Old Testament, if you're to really embrace Revelation, you're going to say,
it's in there.
you ain't seen nothing yet. Like what they did to the Canaanites, you ain't seen nothing yet. It's about to get, when it hits the fan, we are absolutely going to see violence and devastation like never before. And like you said, it was, it's going to be fire the next time.
Yeah.
And to think that what we're doing is in addition to the overall specifics of the indoctrination and the storyline, the timeline of it all, we're indoctrinating people generically to think violence against unbelievers is ultimately going to be just ubiquitous, and it's going to be a good thing. We're supposed to rejoice that God is eventually going to judge those who did not believe, and those who are still in their sins.
Yeah, definitely. It's the wrath of Jesus. I mean, and I, I would argue too that perhaps that inclusion of Revelation in the New Testament canon allowed people to be like, oh, well, Jesus is like Yahweh. He does bring judgment and wrath. Like you saw the peace and loving Jesus when he was in his earthly ministry, and he was doing miracles and healing people and all that kind of stuff. But now that he's now when Daddy comes back, he's going to be mad. It's like it's not going to be like, I don't know. It's definitely interesting how that the imagery and stuff it does, because I think he was whoever wrote it was drawing a lot from Daniel, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. A lot of others. And there's a lot of other earlier, there's like Second Temple Judaism apocalyptic passages that they were copying from that were like, they could have just as easily been in the canon. Yeah,
it goes crazy deep. Like I never really got really far into it, but enough that I'm like, it's unfortunate how easy it is to use that imagery and brainwash people so quickly, because it is very powerful, like the way it's written and the way it's phrased and everything, and the poetic nature of it, and it's like the mysterious like symbology and everything that it's just ripe for that. And like a lot of cultish, like not who we'd consider like an apostate, or not apostate, but heretical churches use a Revelation, they wield it, you know what I mean, like to kind of strike the fear of God in everybody. But
yeah, I think you could probably argue, I say this tongue in cheek, but you could probably argue too that whoever wrote the book of Revelation was probably smoking something.
I've heard that or took some like mushrooms or something like that, and I wouldn't be surprised either, because like I feel like some of these, like I was saying with Paul, but especially Revelation, it's way more mystical than people realize, that because we like to try to anachronize it, is that a right way to use that? We view it anachronistically, or with the lens of now we're looking back and through all the history when people thought the rapture was coming, who thought the world was ending, and it didn't. And then they had to reorganize and, you know, figure it out again. And then, oh, now it's coming. Oh, it's coming. And then it didn't come. And then you got to redo it again. And so now we're in however many iterations of that. Each time it doesn't happen. And then somebody else looks at it again and says, well, this means this, that means that. And I have it figured out now. You know, what was that book that like 88 reasons that the rapture will happen in 1988?
Yep.
And
Howard Camping, he set dates a few times.
Yeah. So it's just, and then people are doing it now as well. So it's just like, guys, when are we going to realize that this isn't going to happen, you know? And, but I know there's been some like research and stuff. I've been meaning to kind of get into it on, or studies about, cults or how religions survive like failed apocalypse when you have, because there's been, you know, innumerable cults and religions that had some sort of apocalyptic vision, and when it didn't happen, they didn't break up right away, right? They didn't, because people are able to, you know, relieve their cognitive dissonance by like coming up with new interpretations and things like that. So, but yeah, it is definitely not very healthy to think that way. I think you're right.
I think it's probably arguably too just one of the many ways we would list that they deprive you of the sense of living for today. Like, you know, if you really think that your real life starts when you die, you know, like this is almost like a test life, and your real life starts when you die, but also you get this sense that this life's going to be over in the blink of an eye, and it could be violently over at any point. You know, just someone's going to drop a bomb, and suddenly we're in World War III, and suddenly we are at the point of the rapture and all that kind of stuff in the tribulation. That you really get this sense that I don't feel quite home in this world.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff in Christianity is to make you feel like this is not your home.
I always hated that.
Yeah,
I don't know why, but yeah, because like I didn't get saved when I was a really little kid, so I don't think I quite had that. Like I still was like, that never really sat right with me when people were like, you know, oh, you should hate this life. And even when Jesus would say, I'd be like, this just doesn't seem right. Like, this isn't your home. This isn't okay. Yeah, but it is right now. You know, I still have to get up and go to work. I still have to pay bills. I still have to do this and that, you know, and like, if you're constantly, like you're saying, you have to like, almost like project your mind into the clouds kind of, or into like this. But I think maybe what like if I was like an on fire Christian, I would be like, well, that just means, like you were saying earlier, it's like you just got to get out and preach the word, and like that's what you would turn that motivation into, to like the normal, you know, human mechanism of survival. Now you're diverting that resource to telling other people, and you know, spending every waking moment in prayer and all this kind of stuff, and you know, and like you said, like that kind of like, in an extreme end, it takes someone out of society, like in a way, you know what I'm saying? When somebody, because you're not really benefiting society if you think like the world's going to end tomorrow or whatever.
It's true.
So, but you know, thankfully there's enough Christians that don't really get to that point, you know, like, and have a more like reasoned approach where they're like just going to live their life, and if it happens, it happens. I feel like that's what most people reach, that equilibrium, you know, where for some it's like this extreme, you know, it's action, and then some it's like, okay, we're just because you gotta live your life, you know, at the end of the day, and
which is ironically though, I think a form of suppressing what you really believe, and that's where I love to say that a lot of people don't really believe what they claim to believe in one way or another.
Yeah.
You know, like saying, I really believe in heaven. Well, if you're, you know, if you have a friend that died really early in life, but they were a Christian and you're a Christian, then they just graduated to the biggest party ever. So what are you so upset about? And yet they'll be sad for the next decade. It's like, this was celebration time, but it's like
Yeah.
you're betraying that you don't really believe it because you're so sad over their death. Like, you're telling me that your worldview actually knows on some level this might
Yeah.
not be as clear cut as we thought it was, and it's same with the end time stuff.
Well, right. And like what you just said there, that is one of the biggest problems with the whole idea and thinking of it that way, is because the idea is going against everything in your nature as a human being, to be distraught over somebody you love that is no longer with somebody you enjoy their company, and like this is the time you have with that person. And so like placing that the importance of that moment so outside of like time now, it's like, oh well, in the by and by, and that mentality is like, I think it's a way, and I'm sure you've heard of this and you know this, but like it's a way to combat the existential dread that faces everybody in the lieu of such a belief that it's going to be better on the other side or whatever. And
Yeah.
that when you're, like you said, you're told that, oh well, this person died and they're going to go to heaven, and so like you really should be rejoicing. And it's like, I think that just sort of, it wrenches you on the inside, as far as like, because it's going against every natural human instinct that you would have. And normally, if you didn't have to believe this, right? Like,
Yeah.
because that's kind of like I said the other day, it's like when you have to believe something, or you're forced to believe something, then in order to maintain like having all that cognitive dissonance, you have to sort of convince yourself to go against your nature in a way. And so I think that this is the flesh that Paul had talked about so much, that because you're always at war with the flesh, right? And that right there is the same sort of idea of when somebody dies and, oh, I'm sad. It's like, oh, that's the flesh. It's like, what? Like, yes, I have a biology. Like I have emotions. I'm a human being. That's like you said the other day too. Like lust is not a sin. It's like we're a primate, and we have these urges and all these stuff. And like, this is stuff we're constantly warring against. And then you bring in something like the rapture could happen at any moment. And meanwhile, like, even if you've done all your due diligence of sitting in prayer and journaling and reading your Bible and having counsel, and you still struggle with something, and you're like, that's when those moments of doubt come in. And then you start to think that, like, like you said,
I'm not a Christian.
when in that, well, right. But like you said it earlier, like, well, becomes this sort of like idea that, well, in that moment, when you see Jesus face to face, it's like, then it's going to be, that's when you'll really find out if you really believed, I guess, and that just,
Yeah.
that idea of like this judgment. And that's what the rapture really, or the end times really about, right? It's about judging the wicked. And like, I honestly, like, when I was a believer, I had to start believing in order to keep, like, because the people I knew that weren't believers and stuff, like I kind of eventually came to a more of a sorry, I just went blank. What is it? The destruction.
Annihilationism.
Annihilationism. Yeah. So I came to that, where I'm like, okay, so what's going to happen is people who are in Christ will be ushered into new life, or into the kingdom, and they will live forever. And then all those who didn't believe or who were wicked will be judged and burned, basically, like destroyed. And most of the imagery and I would argue a lot of it, and I haven't done like a super in-depth study on it, but I feel like annihilationism is just as probable as eternal conscious torment, because I think the idea of the eternal conscious torment only came around when they they mix the views of middle Platonism and the idea of like a soul that lasts forever. And because like, I would think that the Jews at that time really just believed that, when you die, you die. The breath's not in you. When you exhale your last breath, that's your spirit you're giving out, right? And then so they thought that the body would be miraculously brought back to life in order to be judged. You're either going to be judged or ushered into the kingdom, right?
Yeah.
So it's like that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, just a quick thought here. I'll let you go.
Yeah.
I saw someone jumped in a second ago, and they jumped back out again, I think. But I just want to say too, just to comment on what you said. I think the thing that you're saying too reminds me of is that a lot of this really does give people such a sense that they are living in a world of so much terror, and that you can never really be okay. And like you said, but maybe your faith that you declared already is fake. Maybe you're a fake
Yeah.
believer, so you should be terrified that you're not a true believer. But you should also
Right.
be terrified of the end times. And they between the violence that's inherent in both reading the Old Testament but knowing what's coming in the book of Revelation, that's your pending future, knowing the anxiety of maybe I'm saved, maybe I'm not, the question of am I really a true believer, am I faking it? There's so much anxiety, and I think that's in some ways that's the crux of a lot of this for us, is that we're realizing they're trying to sell you on something. There is a lot of anxiety that you should, from a Christian perspective, you should be anxious, but we have the cure. So like Dan Barker says, like are you going to really trust a doctor that's going to cut you on purpose and then sell you the Band-Aid? But they're creating a huge problem and then selling you the cure. And the reality is that if you didn't have this, you would have such a different perspective. It doesn't mean life would feel very peaceful or safe. This is a very unsafe world. You can get a disease in a heartbeat. You can be dead in an hour or a day, in a car accident, whatever. Like, there's a lot of ways that this world is unsafe. And so it isn't like if you remove apocalypticism, suddenly everything's great. We know that the life is a scary place, but at least to have the freedom to focus on the stuff that's real as opposed to imaginary is a very big deal. And I think too, the idea of constantly thinking to yourself, I'm more and more comfortable with, and this got me so much, I'm more and more comfortable with eventually agreeing with God that these bad people who never repented, they really do deserve this stuff.
Yeah.
And at some point, like, I'm not going to be up in heaven saying, God, I'm so glad I'm here, but God, can you please stop torturing those people and please get them out of hell, or please don't do that to them.
Oh no, you're gonna be rejoicing.
Yeah,
we're gonna be up there with God with the incense of the burning wicked people rising up to heaven and going, doesn't that smell good? Exactly. I mean, that's the idea, right? I mean, we're all gonna be, and then that brings up questions about, where does your memory go from your life? Are you no longer going to remember the lessons and stuff that you had in life? Is God just going to reset you, and then so you'll be like a baby again? And how old are you going to be when you're there? And it's just, there's so many like way, and then you hear about the whole thing of like, so what if you got eaten by an animal or something? And then what happens then, right? Like, the body's just going to be phased into existence. And well, of course God can do that, right? He can phase us into existence out of nothing, but he can't like save my mom, right? Like he couldn't like freaking, I don't know, I could go on and on a list of like all the messed up stuff, right? It's just like however many children have starved to death since we started this thing, like it's like every so many seconds, I can't remember exactly, but it's just, so it's like, if God is going to come back and set everything right, like, why doth he tarry? Like, what?
Yeah, exactly. And it's another, I think, and I'll wrap up with this, and we're going to bring Shell on in a second, but I'll just say this and let you go. I think it's one of those things where you do, as you're saying, a question, why doesn't it wrap up? And also maybe just to go back to the earlier part of the story, like, if the at the end of this needs to be some epic cosmic battle that includes angels and demons and all these big events, why
Yeah.
couldn't you have foreseen that this was the way it was going to go in advance and just take steps at the very beginning to avoid it, such as never create Satan, or never let him into the garden, or condemn him and seclude him off before
Mm.
when he falls, before he can do the damage in the garden. But again, it's just like any of these stories where like Friday the 13th, you need the bad guy to keep
Yeah.
coming back so that you can
Yeah.
get to the next movie.
Yeah.
And that's what makes you addicted to, like, yes, it's over. Oh wait, no, it's not. And there's more.
Right.
There's always more to the bad guys coming. And if you can get people to think along those lines, you sit on the edge of your seat with your popcorn thinking, this is going to be a great this is going to be the grand finale, and I can't wait to see it. And you just sit there waiting for it, and as you're sitting there waiting for it, your real life is passing you by,
Yeah.
and you never live a day in your life while you're waiting for all this stuff to come to pass. And it's just crazy. And I think a lot of us, arguably, if we heard
Yeah.
similar claims from other religions, would call bullshit.
Right.
Because it's in our religion, we're like, oh no, this is all true. No, the white horse and everything. We're gonna.
Yeah.
Did you ever see that movie? I think it's Bill Myers. Is it Religulous?
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
He just
I'll have to check it out. I think when I saw it, I was still a believer, so I don't need that. It's kind of like an anti-religion movie, right?
Yeah, he just takes piss at Christians the whole time. He just makes fun of them. And there's some lady in some church. He's just like, I can't wait. I'm going to be riding in with Jesus on a white horse. Praise the Lord. And he's just like, he's making her look so stupid. But if another religion said that, we'd say, yeah, that is stupid.
Yeah,
but because it's ours, we get a free pass.
Well, yeah, and that absolutely, like really, what a waste, right? Like when you, and again, like I said before, I think there's a spectrum. I don't think it. Arguably, you would say that some Christians don't believe enough, like you're saying, alluding to earlier, with like, no, if you really did believe, then you would be on about all this stuff. But I really feel like the nominal Christian, the normal like person doesn't have it in the front of their mind. Although like whenever wars and stuff like that happen, like, which is just a timely topic, right? With the stuff going on now in the Middle East. But like, yeah, I think that anytime stuff like this ramps up, it's like now the wheels get churning again. And then you get pastors that are starting to look at all this stuff happening, and then they're preaching it to the congregation. So now there's going to be this sort of like uptick and rise in people that are having this apocalyptic sort of visions happening, right, in their imagination, and so like, yeah, it is such a waste. Like, it's like an unnecessary diversion of your energy and your resources, right? Like even just mentally, like instead of just being able to or investing all of your time and energy and everything like that into making a better future for yourself and for your children, and making the community a better place and doing all this kind of thing, everything has to be couched in Jesus coming at any moment. So, trim your wicks and all that kind of stuff. But I'll let you go if there's somebody that's coming. I don't want to steal.
Yeah, no worries. Well, thank you so much, Keith. It's been great to sort of go back and forth with you on these topics. I love it.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. Well, please do jump in again. We'll have a lot more cool topics. I'm sure some more will be somewhere along the line will be a topic that you have some things to share about. So please do join us again soon. I really appreciate your time.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Thank you so much. Yeah, and I just going to say one more thing here, and I'm going to bring Shell in. I think that for a lot of us, we really do, when we look at this stuff, we really do get to a point as deconstructing people where you have to look back at your past believing this stuff and say, these are some of the things that should have tipped me off. There's so many things, you could list 1,000 things, but some of these things should really have tipped you off. The fact that we were willing to accept a God who is so incredibly violent and so incredibly bitter against his own children that he's going to just slaughter them. And we would justify it because we believed in the white hot holiness of God, and that someday when we saw His holiness, we would agree that He's the right to judge sin this way. But we've said a lot here. But when you believe monstrous things long enough, it turns you into a monster. And I'll just add this and then bring in Shell as well. I think we need to be aware and sensitive to the fact that there are people in our world, not just in church now, but I think in our government, who directly believe that the apocalyptic passages in Scripture are not just real, but they need to be ushered in, and that we have a part to play in that. And I don't know how much of that is related to what's going on with the current wars, but I do sense that there's some evidence that some of the people at the highest levels are basically informing everyone else that's, the decision makers, that they need to do this, and that it's not just about keeping the world safe, that this is about ushering in apocalyptic end times events. And that's scary. It's scary when you think that the people who have the codes to the most powerful weapons and the authority over the most powerful militaries in the world are using as their motivation not just what they consider general safety for our world or for the United States or whatever, but they're directly trying to bring about apocalyptic end times events on purpose through their military interventions. That may or may not be happening, but if it is, I think that's pretty darn scary. And I don't know for sure if it's happening. I don't think any of us are going to be on those conversations to know, but sometimes you just get a little bit of a sense that maybe that's happening. And boy, I hope it's not. But if it is, that's a scary thought. That we've got people trying to bring Jesus back on purpose by going to war and whatever. So we're going to bring Shell in here, and then we'll go to some comments. Shell, thank you so much for joining us again. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, thank you for your patience. I appreciate it. And remind everybody where you're calling from, and then tell us about your thoughts about how apocalyptic thinking affected or does affect currently your mental health.
Okay, so I'm from south of St. Louis in Missouri. So that's
Nice.
where I'm coming from. And I'm kind of from more of the hillbilly part of that area. So if you hear that, if you hear that accent, but I definitely was affected by apocalyptic thinking. Just growing up, it was definitely like a recurring theme that scared me. Like, probably the scariest thing was demons for me, like the thought of demons. And then the second scariest was the rapture, all of that happening. And of course, so I was in an independent fundamentalist church, which was kind of like Baptist adjacent, I guess you would consider it. We did summer camps with Baptist churches and stuff like that. So we believed in like a pre-tribulation rapture. So I hoped I wouldn't be around, when the scary stuff started happening. But I was always, of course, afraid that I was going to be left behind, because the Left Behind series was really big when I was growing up. And then, like, anytime a plane would fly over, I remember that would be a big thing. Like, anytime there was any noise in the sky that I wasn't sure about. I'm kind of sensitive to loud sounds and stuff like that to begin with. And just anything like that in the sky, I was like, oh my goodness, could it be the trumpets? Could it be could it be the end times? So that was always really scary for me. And then I don't think that I really planned my life around the end times or anything like that, but definitely there was a theme of like that throughout growing up, just because, especially with wars in the Middle East and things like that, you'll hear rumors of wars and all of that. And I'm sorry if I repeat anything that is it Keith, the guy before me, said.
Yeah, no worries. We covered a lot.
I kept cutting out, so I hope my Wi-Fi behaves now. I'm back in my office near the router, so hopefully it behaves now.
Yeah. Do you feel like any of the things that you mentioned about some of the earlier anxieties, that they, after deconstruction, that they still hang on a little bit in any way?
That probably was one of the, that and hell were two of the last, big fears to drop really for me. when I left and finally did admit to myself that I did not think God was real, like I was sure of it. I remember I was like, I locked myself back in like my back bedroom, the bathroom and stuff, because I was just like sitting there alone. I was like, I really believe this? And I was like, you know what? And this is how, I don't know, it's awful, but when I said it, I said, God, if you are real and I'm wrong about this, like just strike me down right now, because I don't want to lead anybody away from Christianity. And I was like, but I'm still here. So either he didn't take my word for that, or he's not there. I don't know. But I wound up getting some therapy when I got out, because I thought, this was my entire worldview, my entire framework that I kind of built my life on. My husband and I left at the same time, and I had a lot harder time than he did. And I just couldn't let go of things as easily, I think. And so I would kind of spiral in thinking about, hell or the rapture, the end of the world kind of thing. And so I did get some therapy, and I really just tried to read a lot and watch a lot of debates and things like that to kind of help calm my fears and learn more, because that was really all I knew. And I remember one of the verses that helped me a lot was when Jesus is standing there and he says to there's a crowd of people standing there and the disciples and everything, and he says, like, these things will come to pass before the last of you is like passed away. I forget the exact verse.
Right.
You might know what I'm talking about, but
Yeah.
I was like, okay, right there, Jesus thought this was gonna happen in his disciples' lifetime, in his apostles' lifetime. So because if everybody standing there would have still been, or if some of the people standing there would have still been alive when it happened, of course there's mental gymnastics to get around that issue, but as there always was, but that really, to me, kind of seals that. I mean, that helped a lot. I really do think, like a lot of scholars think, that he was an apocalyptic prophet. And I think more so than that, like, he really was a full-blown cult leader, even if like some of his teachings were really good. I mean, I do definitely think he was a cult leader who, was trying to get people to give up their livelihood and be, I always think of like an Ananias and Sapphira. I'm sorry, I'm getting off topic, but I always think of like Ananias and Sapphira and how they didn't give everything, and because they lied and they didn't give everything, they were struck down dead immediately. like that's like terror and fear. Like, why would that be a bigger sin than just about, anything else? Or like Peter denying God, denying Jesus. Like, why would that have been a bigger sin that they would have been struck down dead immediately? I think they really were. It was a cult. They were trying to get people to give their livelihood away. And the best way to do that is to say, hey, the end's coming soon and you're going to be judged. So might as well give up, your cash, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I also, just a funny, I guess, thing is when I was at summer camp. Summer camp is a big thing for me, the Christian summer camp, because when I was a kid, we did not go to church regularly. We did for a while, and then my mom kind of like wasn't super into it, but I guess still wanted me to have that, so she sent me to summer camp, right? And so while I was at summer camp, we would get really on fire for God. I just remember being so on fire for God, and we would decorate our cabins every day. The nurses would come in and like inspect our cabins to make sure they were clean, right? And so we would decorate our cabins, and that would get us extra points. And so a theme for every single year we always did, one of the days was the rapture, where we laid out all of our like clothes and stuff and made it look like we had been raptured. And just to think about being a kid and not understanding fully, I guess, the impact of what we were actually doing. I mean, how terrifying. I don't know. but that we just thought that was some cute little thing to do to set our stuff out like that and make it look like we'd all been raptured.
Yeah, that's crazy. That is crazy. It's just amazing how we go through these mental gymnastics to try to, I guess, in some ways, live out our faith on the deepest levels. And yeah, it is. I think I've got a comment here that says that's fucked up. Yeah, yeah. But you know,
It was. Yeah.
honestly, we all did some pretty fucked up things as Christians, and anything that would make you feel like you should be embarrassed by what you did. I've got 100 things that I did for Christ that I would put in that same category, and we'd beat each other up, or beat ourselves up. Beat ourselves up for Christ. We would embarrass ourselves for Christ, and of course, we would have seen that in many ways as a badge of honor, that we're willing to do anything to live for Christ, right. And also that we really mean this. Like, we're not going through the motions. We really, 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 really mean it. Like, I remember I've said this before, but in my attempts to avoid lust, I used to imagine people, like, especially if I saw a beautiful woman and I was tempted to think, oh, she's got beautiful curves or something, I would catch myself and say, you need to see her as on her way to hell, and the most important thing is not how beautiful she is or sexy. The most important thing is whether she's in a right relationship with God. And so I would purposefully in my mind pretend that people around me were on fire, as if I could foresee where they were going to be. And obviously you're not going to look at someone that's on fire and burning and tortured and think, oh, they're sexy. You're just going to be horrified that they're being tortured. And that's just the mental gymnastics that we used to go through to be on our best behavior for God, or serious about the gospel, or like your story. It's just, we all did it in different ways, and it's kind of scary how crazy our minds can go when we're truly indoctrinated to the deepest levels from an early age.
Yeah. Something else that did help me after I left too was just knowing that, or learning that in Revelations, it was most likely a critique of Nero.
Right.
Like apparently the name, the 666 thing is like a numerology for Nero or something like that. So just knowing that it was more disguised political criticism than actual anything that made sense, trying to make sense out of it. Like some of the imagery was symbolic of, like, was it the monster with, I forget, 10 heads or something?
Yeah.
It was supposed to be Rome and all of that, the hills, so
exactly
that helped kind of learning more the history. And I mean, that's still to this day, I'm still interested in learning just about all of the history surrounding it, and just all of the crazy ways that, like you were saying, the politicians, they like to use it. I hope, like you said, I hope that that's not really what they're doing. They aren't really trying to bring on the end times. I'm thinking it's probably more so just invoking God for, support from that constituency, who are mainly, because I think they've made, bad decision, and they're trying, I don't know, but
yeah, trying to get back out of it. Well, I think you're right, though. A lot of it's based on that Nero stuff, and a lot of it, honestly, I think is based on astrotheology, and
yeah.
I'm sure some other crazy stuff, early Kabbalism stuff, but with the gematria. But yeah, there's so many little things, and clearly some kind of Gnosticism with all these secrets. Whenever you kind of get the sense that there's secrets, and most of you are going to have no idea how to interpret this, but we know a few of you on the inside of the club, you'll get it. So I'll say,
it's a way to control people. It's a way to make them feel inferior, so you can be superior over them. If they feel confused and they're like, wait, what? They feel like they need you to teach them, how it is. That's a way to have power over someone. So being confusing, like, now that I've left Christianity, something that has stuck with me, and I'm like, okay, I'm glad that I know this now. It's like, the more confusing a system is, the more there's a lack of transparency. It's like an automatic red flag for me that there's probably some form of corruption going on with that institution, or that, because that's what it is. If you're confused, if you don't know which way's up, if something's difficult to understand like that, it can be a method of control.
That's a great point.
But yeah, so that's probably all I have to say on the apocalypse. I don't.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and I completely agree. Especially if you sense that you have not just secrets that need to be uncovered, but that you have a special teacher who kind of has the inside track. And honestly, I think that's a human trait of control, not just religion. But I've seen atheists and people certainly, at least who are heavily deconstructed, who lean towards that, where they've got some kind of special interpretive ability. I've seen people that, especially when I've seen people who can easily expose astrotheology and numerology, and they're trying to basically say, look, Christianity is garbage, and it's made up, and it's mysticism and mythology. I can show you, I can take you to the depths of what the numerology and the astrotheology means. But you almost, in some of the videos I've seen, you get the sense that they're almost saying, like, I'm the only one who understands this. Like, it's been 2,000 years and you're the only one now
I know you have to. That's the problem. I think Christianity perpetuated in us like this sense of kind of being special and understanding things. And so when we get out of it, I think we have to shed that, because it's easy to get into that, back into that mindset. Like, someone reached out to me. It was the brother of someone I knew in the church, and he had left the church before me, and he kind of saw how I was being when I first left, because I was like, like when you first believe in God, you're like on fire for God kind of thing, and you want to tell everybody about it, sort of thing. Like, that's a new thing that baby believers tend to do, right? Well, when you become an atheist, you kind of go through the same thing. You're like, whoa, I just found out something that's like revolutionary, and it is to us, but it's not to everybody else. And like, you're sitting there trying to tell your friends that are still in the religion or whatever, like, but can't you see, like, this is this, and and they're just all like, you're crazy, and I'm like, no, you're crazy.
Exactly.
So, but I kind of got sucked into that just a little bit when I first left, and then he kind of said that, like, he told me that, he was like, yeah, there's kind of a, what do you call it? Like, not a rebound, I guess. I don't know, just some sort of effect that when you leave the religion, kind of like how it was when you first got into the religion. It's like you figured out something new and you're really excited about it and you want to share it, right? So,
amazing.
But I know what you mean, because I've seen that too, where people get really into the weeds trying to do that, and I think you can really get into an unhealthy spiral when you leave, of just trying to make everything make sense. And the thing is, it doesn't make sense. There's so many contradictions, so many places. I remember I started reading the Gospels side by side, and within like the first 2 chapters, I was like, okay, already, there's no way. Just between Herod and Quirinius and that whole thing when Jesus was born, like, that makes no sense. There's a way, and it just went on and on and on. And I was like, wow, okay. So, I mean, they threw things in there like numerology and astrology, all of that, I think, to make it sound like they had some higher, superior thought process, or, knowledge, like you said, the Gnosticism. But I think it was just the culture that they were in at the time that was full of that. And they were just kind of stealing bits and pieces from everywhere. So it's not like it all aligns or all comes together. It just contradicts itself a lot.
Yeah, and I think too, just to piggyback directly off what you just said, if we realize just on the most basic level that culture back then was steeped in what they called mystery cults. There was a reason they were called mystery cults, and they did have initiates and people that were on the inside track. And you somehow you paid your dues and you went through their training and so forth, and you didn't hear whatever their secrets were, but that was very clear. And Christianity is just another version of it.
Right, like the cult of Dionysus or Dionysius, I don't know. Apparently there was something like baptism within that. So that may be where we get that from. I mean, ritual cleansing was big in the Jewish culture too, you know, prior to that, but the like immersion or just the following of what your God, with the trials that your God went through in Greek culture, you would kind of mimic that with the rituals you did. So the fact that baptism is like a symbol of dying, being buried, and rising again from the water, I guess, as a clean new person. I mean, that is kind of mimicking what Jesus did. And then like drinking blood, I mean, symbolically, but the drinking of blood, I remember I listened to Rabbi Tovia Singer, I believe his name is. He's on YouTube. And he's Jewish. He's not atheist. But that really helped me listening to some of his stuff, actually, because he goes over how a lot of like the prophecies, like in Isaiah and things like that, were definitely not you know, foretelling of Jesus or anything like that, like Isaiah 53. Sorry, I'm like way getting off topic of the apocalypticism.
That's fine. It's a bit of a spider web, isn't it? It kind of goes in different directions.
Sorry about that. But
yeah,
he
all good.
But he talked about how like the fact that we even do the ritual drinking of Jesus's blood, like that would be an abhorrent ritual in the Jewish culture. Like human blood was a big no-no to touch or, you know, come into contact with or anything. So that is definitely more of a Greco-Roman influenced ritual there, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And very much too, we were talking the other day about animism, and that's animistic. You know, you drink the blood of either your enemy to absorb their power, or of your hero, or of your deceased father or grandfather. You know, you drink the blood of somebody, you're absorbing their power. That was very tribal and animistic from, you know, much before, you know, it was like ancient Mesopotamia kind of stuff and earlier. We are a tribal people. And so the fact that we still do this is just evidence that animism is woven into our psyche so deeply, and we don't even know it. We look at tribal people, and some of the stuff they do seems so weird. Like I remember when I was in New Guinea, they would tell us, like, you know, some of these people have gardens, and they have sickles where they could just cut down all the vegetation quickly, but they won't. They have like a little paring knife, a little teeny knife, and they'll cut stuff down little by little by little. Why would they do that? Because there's a spirit in that field, and you don't want to upset them. It's like, and you're like, well, that's so weird. Just get your sickle and cut your damn corn down. But it's like, no, you don't upset the spirit of the field. You do it slowly, so they barely notice you. And you're like, that's so animistic and so different. It's like, nah, we do the same thing. And I was joking about it the other day, like, you know, knock on wood or keep your fingers crossed. We do these little rituals that keep us kind of safe. Keep us kind of safe. And, you know, you pray your rosary and maybe you won't get in a car accident or whatever. We do so many little things to hope that the bad things stay away, the bad juju. And it's like, we are tribal animistic people just as much as the people that are living in grass huts. We just spin it differently, but we're the same people.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to be in Shakespeare Society, and whenever we would do Macbeth, we weren't allowed to call it Macbeth. It had to be the Scottish play. And if we ever accidentally said Macbeth, we had to like spin around 3 times and spit over our shoulder. That's little funny. Things like that.
Well, thank you so much, Shel, for coming on. Was there anything else on your heart to share before we wrap up?
Not that I can think of, no.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much. Please keep looking out for these live streams, especially the call-ins. I'm aiming to do them very, very regularly. So hopefully some more of the topics will be something that you'll have some things to share about. So please keep us on your radar. We'd love to have you back again on a regular basis. I really appreciate your time tonight, though.
I love it. All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, Shel. Appreciate you. And I'm going to read a few comments here that came in. And some of these are going to be older because we kind of just went from for a while with Keith and then with Shel. But I'm going to go back a little bit just to catch up on a few of these. Some of these that we might not quite catch the full context because of them being from a while ago. Noel had said a while ago, it taught me to be led by terror and desperation rather than to slow down and critically think it through. My mental health was impacted in that I didn't know how to make good decisions for myself. I relied on faith, aka knee-jerk reactions. And I believe she had said something else here. It kept me striving when I was already totally exhausted, aka I can do all things. Yeah, exactly. Well said. Mark Richter says major life decisions based on superstition. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So many of our big decisions, so many big decisions based on what is the will of the God, who is the ancient Canaanite demigod, who is the evolution of this ancient demigod. And if we could get our time back. Yeah, dark songs, but the rhymes are really good. Amy says, for nearly a month I was terrified. I temporarily sought solace in the whirring of the furnace and looking out and seeing lights on the horizon. Yeah, a lifetime of this would have seriously messed me up. I walked through a frozen over soybean field, seeing if I could eat these beans and if I could adjust to the cold. A popular rock song at the time by the Rolling Stones, Slave, Don't Want to Be Your Slave, as applied to whoever this sky god was. So this was in November, December 1981, and they were tying the next end of the world to the 1982 planetary alignment. Wow. I don't know if I had heard about that. I'm not surprised, but I'm not sure if I knew about that, but that's interesting. And Amy one more time says, there are officers in the military that are pushing the apocalypse to motivate troops. It started lawsuits. Yeah, I've heard about it. I don't know if it's been verified, but it definitely seems suspicious and sad if it's true. Noel again says, I've had the experience of men and pastors in my life, those who assumed positions of authority, would wield their assumptions about end times to keep me under their thumb and influence. It was a tool. Yeah, it really was. I could ditto that as well. Simon says, how are folks in the United States thinking about the Iran war right now? Is there a significant amount of people actually supporting this? Asking from Germany. I don't know that I've talked to people myself directly enough to know. But from what I read in the news, it does seem like the tide is definitely against against the war. That it wasn't well thought out, it wasn't planned, it wasn't necessarily critical at this time. I know there's more to it, and so I don't want to make assumptions at my level, knowing very little about it, ultimately, from compared to the people at the upper levels of government. But from what I see over here, it seems like most people are saying this wasn't well thought out, and that we're basically messing ourselves up in some pretty significant ways because of our just basically following Israel, just saying, if Israel says we need to join them, then I guess we're going to do what they say. But that's not the way we should work. And if that's what's happening, that's really sad. And also I'll just say the idea that we can buy all these bombs and make all these bombs, but we can't feed our own people like that. Come on, we've always got money for war, as they say, but we don't have money to feed our own people. That's sad and it's sick. Fire and Believer, Noelle, she says, Keith, I don't know if you'll see this, but I appreciate you and your perspective. Please keep speaking up. Very, very cool. Laredo Lasso, for the first time in American history, the war with Iran has negative public sentiment. Yeah, I'm not in support of. Keith, thank you to Noelle. I'm glad to hear Shell D's perspective. Noelle says, oh my God, Shell, Christian summer camps did the same thing. My Christian summer camps did the same thing. Yeah, there's some of these motifs just carried over because it's the way to get the indoctrination deeper and deeper, right? Growing up, I always kept waiting for the grown-ups to reveal they didn't actually believe this nonsense. Imagine my surprise. That's funny. Yeah, I mean, if you really think that they're pretending, hey, little Johnny, the elf on the shelf is real, but in your head is little Johnny, like, no, I know, then that Santa's not real and the elf on the shelf isn't real. You're just making this up, and then you realize slowly that they actually think Santa's real and the elf on the shelf is real. It's kind of weird. Noelle says, in so many ways, I'm becoming convinced that the crux of the power of Christianity is pushing people into a corner that's nearly impossible to get out of. Yeah, very well said. I think it's more creating an in-group and out-group, and you don't want to be part of the out-group, do you? Yeah, it's us versus them. You're with us or you're against us. The juxtaposition of being super special and chosen by God and also born evil in our sin keeps us all paralyzed as to what to do next. Yeah, just keeps us feeding out of their hands. If we can just get a little bit more spiritual food, a little bit more holiness, we'll just be okay for today and hopefully for eternity. But just keep coming back. You never know when you might not have enough of the God bread. So keep coming back to the soup kitchen, and we'll keep giving you beggars more of our food. Simon says, having had similar experiences, I sometimes wonder whether the state should step in to prevent early childhood indoctrination, but it's hard to see what that would even look like. Yeah, I would agree. It'd be very, very hard, and I don't think many people would want to be told how to parent your children, but it's one of those conundrums of like, this shouldn't happen, but the only way to enforce it would be to get in people's private business in a way that I think would be very inappropriate. And, I certainly would not want, Christians coming in, or Muslims for that matter, anybody coming in and saying, you can't tell your children you're an atheist. That's wrong. They might claim that's indoctrination. So just like we wouldn't want people telling us what to tell our kids, we shouldn't do it to either other people either. But at the same time, we can have an opinion and say, I think that's a psychological abuse dynamic, and it's just sad. I don't think that's truly feasible. Yeah, it's not feasible, but best we can do is provide high quality education as a society. Yeah, for sure. Harper sees, hi from Australia, Tim. Only just saw this has started. This was absolutely pivotal for me. I was brought up atheist, but while traveling in Australia in 1976, I got scooped up by a cult. Oh, that's awful. I'm so sorry. If you're ever open to telling your story, if it's one that ends in agnosticism or atheism, please feel free to reach out. My Facebook handle is simply Harmonic Tim, all one word, Harmonic Tim. Add me as a friend if we're not already, and reach out to me there, and let's get a chance to hear your story. I appreciate it very much. My funny Santa experience: I sat on his lap and noticed a huge diving watch. I asked if this was to keep track of all the world time zones. When he was surprised and confused, I asked, I knew. I knew he was fake. So yeah, that's crazy. That's a really funny story. Yeah, he would know that. He would know if he was Santa, but the fact that he's confused gives it away. I love, by the way, this is totally off topic, but I love the American version of The Office scenes where the Michael Scott plays Santa. Oh my goodness, those are so funny. Those are so funny. If you haven't seen that, I'm sure there's something on YouTube someone's compiled, but just do The Office, Michael Scott being Santa or something, and they're hysterical. Be sad if it was true, but glad it's just comedy. In Germany, we at least have publicly funded cult counseling centers that support people affected by manipulative or extremist groups, including those trying to leave. That's awesome. Very, very cool. Well, I'm going to just mention one or two more things. It looks like no one else has joined, so we're going to wrap it up here in a minute. But I just want to say a few quick things that I think will hopefully round us out tonight. And I think this has been a good discussion. It's been a very good discussion. But I think a few quick things that maybe some people did not mention that I'll just add. We talked about the rapture terror. I think that's obvious. But I think a lot of us would say that some of this stuff affected our mental health, and that was kind of where I was focusing on my question. We did not that everybody answer went there, but just in terms of the original question, the mental health part of it, how did it affect you? I think for some of us, it disturbed our sleep. Where we were insomniacs. That's not my insomnia story. I have one, but it's not that. But some people probably stayed awake worrying about hell and tribulation and judgment and end times and the rapture. I think we sort of touched on this idea of what you might call scrupulosity, or just that obsession of like, I have to be ready and ready more and ready enough. I have to be pure enough and truly saved. I think that's just part and parcel of so much of Christianity. So many of us, I think, would say that we would feel guilty if we felt at all at home. Like if you were just like, yeah, my life's going pretty good here, I'm pretty happy. Or even if it's not going good, I feel at peace. I feel at peace with my life. In that sense, like, you're not supposed to feel at peace here. This is not your home. You should feel only at peace in heaven. You should be heavenly minded. Don't betray that. Your treasure is up in heaven. Your hero is up in heaven. Your true home is up in heaven. Don't feel at home here. You should not feel happy in this life, in a sense. I think a lot of us on that level could also sense that we shouldn't have peace if there was calm, even if it was temporary. Any calm was kind of suspicious, like the calm before the storm. and any sort of sense of silence in a calm sense was like, it's silence before the judgment. And for a lot of us, all these dynamics could probably be wrapped up in some of our OCD tendencies. Not necessarily that you have OCD where you're just flipping light switches on and off or something, but just generic OCD where you just feel like you've got these small thoughts that are intrusive, these impulses, and things just feel somehow cosmically important and cosmically dangerous. And I think arguably a lot of us in terms of our mental health got emotionally exhausted by these things. Just the constant anticipation that it's all going to collapse really soon. All of it's going to collapse any minute now. I mean, that's just, especially when you say that to a kid and a teenager, it's all going to be over any day now. What a weird place to put your emotions. I think a lot of us had sort of an evangelistic sense of panic that, like, you have a crushing, immediate, urgent responsibility. Get people saved. Your time is running out. TikTok, do you not see the sand going through the top of the hourglass? Do you not see that sand is eventually going to run out, and it will be from the top to the bottom? And we're already three quarters of the sand is already gone. Get to the work. And I would say, I think you all have sensed that in my story. If you follow me at all, I took that very seriously. You need to panic. You're running out of time. It's like if you saw a house on fire and you saw maybe somebody in a wheelchair where they just could not get down out of the fire, but you could truly go and you could help them to get out of their burning house, whatever way you could save their body. You might not be able to save the house, but you can get them out of that fire. And it's a lot, it's a lot. I think a lot of us, arguably, in terms of, again, the mental health focus, could say that we felt some difficulty feeling present. If you feel like life is something to sort of endure and to panic through and to brace through instead of something to fully embrace and inhabit and just be present, that can get to you. That can really get to you. And I think that naturally brings out a lot of these trauma body responses, where you hear a siren, you hear a loud noise, you see the headlines on the news, you see an eclipse, oh, there's a blood moon, John Hagee, oh my God, John Hagee, oh, what a mess. And then, any disasters, oh, there's a tsunami, and your old fear pathways sort of reactivate. And I think a lot of us, in that sense, had a really weak ability to just imagine a beautiful future. And I don't mean to say that we should imagine a beautiful future as in to ignore the fact that there are real wars going on and there are real famines and real issues in this world. But just to say that we can imagine that this world can choose peace. And I know I say this occasionally, I should probably say it a lot more, but John Lennon, imagine. Go back to it. It's your mantra. That's your life mantra. Imagine no heaven, imagine no hell, imagine no wars. Just imagine it all. Imagine no countries. Imagine that we're all one. The unity of humanity. What a beautiful thing. We're not going to get there through Christianity. We'll never get there through Christianity or Islam. It's just crazy. See here, I've left Simon's comment there. I'm sorry, I was looking at some notes. Looks like someone did join here. We're going to wrap up in a second, so we'll make this quick, but looks like SM is on the line, so let's see what we got. SM, can you hear me okay?
I can. Can you hear me, Tim?
I can. Thanks so much for joining us. Where are you coming from, and what thoughts do you have for us tonight?
Yeah, I'm in the US, and I saw the prompt, and I thought it was interesting because when I was graduating college, which this was, 15 years ago or so now, I picked where I was going to live and apply for jobs post college very much based on thinking the world was going to end, and there's going to be I wasn't sure if it was there's pre-trib, post-trib, all these types of things. I was like, well, I want to be in a place at least where I feel like I can be, safe if I have to live through significant parts of the tribulation and things like that. So I was researching, all kinds of things just from what geographies would be potentially impacted by like natural disasters, or be more at risk of, I don't know, terrorist attacks, if if it all was kind of kicked off by some sort of terrorist attack or nuclear war or anything like that. So I mean, thankfully
Well,
I ended up in a good spot either way, but um yeah, it's kind of crazy to think that that was a big part of me, like choosing where I was going to live, in such a early stage of my life.
it's funny. I should have heard that before, but I've never heard that. That's the first time I've heard of that. Just out of curiosity, what was like the top one or two places that were deemed the safest?
Um,
Do you recall?
yeah, I mean, yeah, this was like 15 years ago, so it's been a while, but I remember like seeing some things up in like the Northwest, like Montana, Idaho,
Yeah.
um, Utah, places like that. I mean, like Mormons are I wasn't Mormon, but Mormons are like very prepared people and whatnot. So it was like that was a
Yeah.
place that I remember seeing a lot about, like, oh, there's a lot of communities of people who would be prepared to survive something like that until you get to the point where Jesus returns and takes everyone to the clouds.
That's fascinating. I have no idea if this is true, so don't quote me on this. But I think I read something somewhere in the last year about some like the ultra wealthy people, though the 1% of the world, building bunkers somewhere in New Zealand or one of the islands off New Zealand, for that matter, for that particular concern, that like if it all went to hell, then where are you going to live and probably survive the most. Like, and I think it was somewhere off in New Zealand or off New Zealand's coast or something. But it is fascinating. What you said there reminded me of something really funny. Have you ever seen those ads? And these may have been a pure joke, so I may be wrong in thinking these were real. But I remember seeing some kind of ads at some point where there were services set up by non-Christians for Christians saying, if you get raptured, we will be glad to come get your pet. Like if you're right and the rapture happens, why would you want your dog to starve in your locked up house for a while? So if the rapture happens, we will come and we will get your dog and we'll feed him. And that may have been true, but I thought that was hysterical. That it could have been, possibly could have been real. I don't know.
Yeah, you mentioned that, and I feel like I do remember hearing reports of that. I don't know if it was true or not. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe that's our business idea, because obviously the Christians are going to need someone who's not a Christian to do that. So,
Yeah, that's really
maybe,
funny.
maybe they're onto something there. I think it is interesting, like you were saying about the billionaires and bunkers and all these kinds of things. It's like, I think you were reading a comment a little bit ago. I joined the live stream late. I heard someone referencing something about, like some of the people in our military who, think that like this war in the Middle East could usher in the return of Christ and whatnot. And it's just crazy to think that there are people making decisions that could impact, like, if our world survives, that that are doing it with that in mind. And that's pretty scary.
Yeah, it really is. Well, can I just ask? I know you were coming on just for a short time tonight, but you seem very well spoken. If there is any interest at all that you might have now or later in sharing your story and doing an interview, please reach out. My Facebook handle, I'll put it in the comments. But on Facebook, this applies to anybody. My Facebook handle is Harmonic Tim, and feel free to add me as a friend and then send me a message. Just let me know. I'm at the moment. It's a good problem to have. I'm inundated with a whole bunch of people that are responding all at once. But
Mhm.
my goal is to be basically doing live stream interviews now, where I do interviews like once a day, eventually, pretty soon, probably starting in the next week, and then still do a bunch of other live streams for other dynamics. But if you're interested at all, please feel free to reach out. I'd love to have you on the channel. You seem very, very articulate, and I'm sure you've got some stories to tell. So just think about it and reach out when the time is right.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I would definitely be interested. One question I have, I don't have a Facebook, so is there like an email or some other better way to get in touch with you about
There
that?
is, yeah. I'll put my email in here. Just HarmonicAtheist@yahoo.com. I would say though, one of the things that always concerns me with a live stream is bringing people onto my live streams, especially for an interview, and I have no idea anything about them, what they look like at all. And so Facebook is nice because you can kind of, for most people, you can kind of screen them, because you can kind of see their pictures a little bit
Yeah.
to see what they're like. And there's a very different vibe that you get when you can sort of sense what someone's probably going to be like, and they're not going to shock you with, oh my goodness, we've got this whole interview scheduled and I don't even know what your face looks like. So I do tend to try Facebook, but if not, we can always, people can, they have to send me pictures anyway for the thumbnail, but we can play it by ear. But yeah, feel free to reach out whatever way is best for you, and I'd love to get you on the channel when you're ready.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. And you said the email was Harmonic Atheist. Was it at gmail.com?
Yahoo.com. It's also in the
Yahoo.com.
comments if you want to just grab it from there.
Got it. Okay, will
So,
do.
well, thank you so much,
Okay.
SM. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. Have a good evening.
Thanks, you too. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody. And pretty much I went through all the stuff that it was on my heart to share, but I do think it's worth going through this stuff because, number one, we can help each other relate to it. Number two, I think it helps us to understand that some of the things that we do, perhaps even today, are still being driven by these motivations, the fear factors, the intense desire to make a difference. I've admitted before that I think there's a part of me that, perhaps in a bad but good sense at the same time, I wake up thinking I have to make a difference today. I have to make a difference. That drives me intensely. Every minute of the day, I must make a difference. Well, if you're a nihilist, then why? I'm a nihilist to my belief system. My worldview says different. My worldview says I can make a difference, and it's actually important. That's leftover residue from Christianity. I'm not going to touch it. If my nihilism became part of my worldview, I don't think I'd care so much. I care so much because my worldview says you must make a difference, and it will be worth it in the end. It won't be worth it in the end. In the end, we'll all be gone, and it will never matter. But I'm not going to replace that. I want to live with the worldview part of me from Christianity that says, seize the day, make a difference, leave it better than you found it. So, but just even though I don't necessarily want to change it, it's important to pull off the layers of the onion, at least understand who are you, get to know yourself. Some parts will be scary, some parts you'll like, some parts you won't, some parts you'll change, some parts you won't. But at least you'll have a little bit more autonomy when you get to know yourself and say, who I think I am and who I actually am may be radically different. And they may need quite a bit of work to merge together into a whole unified person of integrity. But it's an interesting journey. It really is. I'm going to wrap up with Amy's comment. The thing to remember about bunkers, Amy says something earlier. That is true. The billionaire class has many bunkers in New Zealand, like underground subdivisions. It's wild. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know how like it's verified or not. I'm sure they keep it pretty secret, but if it's true, that's fascinating. Hopefully no one ever needs to use it. The thing to remember about bunkers, eventually you have to come up and face what is on the surface. Yeah, it's only a matter of time. Yeah, if you scorch the earth, eventually it's all going to be over. It was funny. I'll leave you with this. There was this really funny Twilight Zone. I'll never forget it. This guy goes down. He's like he works in a bank or something, but he really hates people. He wants to be left alone all the time. Just like, leave me alone. And he loves to read books. He just wants to be left alone to read books. And he somehow gets, I forget this exact story, but he gets into a bank vault at the time of a nuclear bomb. And because he's in this really heavily fortified bank vault, he survives. Everyone else just gets, blown away to bits. He finds a way to get back out, and he comes up, and of course everything's gone. Every building's gone. Everybody's burnt to a crisp. It's him alone. There's no one left in this world except for him. And he just wants so much. He's like kind of sad, I guess, but he's kind of like, I can finally just read my books. And he needs glasses. Like, his eyes are horrible, and he's got these glasses that help him to see. And something happens at the very, very end. It's so tragically comedic, but something happens and his glasses fall off or something, and they crack, and he's like, suddenly he's got all the time in the world to read his books, but he needs his glasses, and they just broke, and everything else is gone. It's the classic Twilight Zone. Anyway, with that in mind, a little depressing but funny. Thank you all so much for being a part of my life. You all are the best. I really appreciate it so much. Yeah, there's the one where the two guys hide in the bunker and they build a dome over it. Yeah, some of the classic Twilight Zones are pretty interesting. But I do just want to say again, thank you so much for being a part of my life. and I'll probably be on tomorrow. What I've got scheduled so far, just so you're aware, is I have an interesting one called "How Did Science Impact Your Deconstruction?" So, as they say, Lord willing and the creek don't rise, I'll be here tomorrow. How did science impact your deconstruction? That's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. So if you're able to join tomorrow, and hopefully I can keep that schedule, 8 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, just keep it in mind and jump in if you got time. But how did learning about evolution or the age of the earth or geology or, studying DNA or anything, the even older stuff, like Darwin's finches, whatever it was, tectonic plate technology, this telescopes looking deep into space. What part of science fascinated you, and how did that change your deconstruction? If you've got time and interest in sharing any of that, bring up your notes, in your head, and jump on for a minute, or in the comments tomorrow, and tell us how science impacted and moved forward your deconstruction. But for tonight, thank you all so much. I am urgently needing support to keep doing this, but I do intend to eventually get to a point of having 4 or 5 live streams, hopefully even a day. That's my goal. 4 to 5 a day is my high point I'm aiming for. There will be some weeks when I absolutely will do it. Not every week, not every day, but there will be some weeks. So maybe it'll average more like 3 or 4 a day, but I'm trying and I'm very committed to it. I do need your support. If anyone can support me, there's a bunch of ways listed beneath this video. So please do so if you can. And thank you so much for being a part of my life. I love it. And thanks for being part of our community. Thanks for everyone that spoke up or commented. And I will talk to you all later. Have a great evening. Bye.